Just wanted to do a little commentary on Joe Biden's recent appearance on the Axios show on HBO, which I think comes out this Sunday or something like that. So he was talking about how the Democratic Party isn't there with regards to support of Medicare for All. This is a quote from him. Quote, "The party's not there. The party's not there at all. It's bad judgment." This is in reference to AOC. "She's a bright, wonderful person, but where's the party? Come on, man." Again, he's just parroting very centrist, neoliberal, right-wing talking points because the overwhelming majority of especially Democratic voters support bold, progressive policies, especially Medicare for All. And this was from a Common Dreams article. I'll link it in the description box below. So there was an August poll that was conducted by Morning Consult, and it found that 65% of Democratic voters would want their candidate to fight and advocate for Medicare for All. And there was even a poll done by Political and Harvard earlier in the year that said 84% of Democrats supported Medicare for All, and as well as, this is even more important, they wanted their politicians to, actively campaign for it, and, wanted them to view it as an extremely important priority. So again, Joe Biden, just completely wrong, completely either disconnected from reality, or he's just parroting these talking points because he knows, the corporate neoliberal interest will align with him if he comes out, very strongly against advocating for Medicare for All, as he has been, and just wants these very incremental changes. But it's very clear that the Democratic voters, want this bold, progressive Medicare for All position to be actively championed and campaigned for by their, candidate for president. And, obviously, as we've seen lately, the only Democratic nominee for president who is willing to do that is, Bernie Sanders, and he's been unequivocal in his support for it going back to, like the late 1980s. And he's, if you're really concerned about Medicare for All, and a lot of, Democratic voters view it as their top priority, our only choice is to support, Bernie Sanders. And maybe, Biden's line of reasoning would have made more sense if he had said, the Democratic establishment, the entrenched corporate interests that, prop up these candidates, don't want these bold, progressive ideas to be implemented. But it's very clear that the Democratic base, the Democratic voters, do want this because it's something that, is going to benefit everyone in the country having access to universal health care. We won't have 500,000 people going bankrupt, due to medical debt. We won't have 30 to 40,000 people a year dying because they don't have access to health insurance. It's just, and it's going to save us money. We pay, it's like double compared to a lot of other industrialized countries that actually have universal health care, and we're spending all this money with these horrible health outcomes and not getting anything out of it. And we'd be saving money, we'd have universal health care, and Bernie's bill supports I believe dental, vision, mental health care as well. So it's very holistic and all encompassing with all these services and resources we'd have access for. So again, Biden, his policy platform's horrible, his analysis is horrible and just dead wrong. And unless you are one of those, oligarchic elites, or one of the maybe, PMC, the professional middle class type of people, I just don't really see why, you would support, somebody like Joe Biden, or for that matter, Pete Buttigieg, over somebody like Bernie Sanders, who isn't, in the campaign because of some, personal desire to become president. He's doing it because he realizes he's the only candidate who's pushing for these progressive ideas that our country and world desperately needs, and he's the only person who's going to, fight for those policies. And so we need to do, everything we can to make sure that he gets elected, because he's, once in a lifetime type of candidate, and he's, willing to do whatever it takes to get Medicare for All passed, Green New Deal, free college, ending, for-profit prisons, reinstating a livable wage, higher taxes on the extremely wealthy and these corporations, and all of these, policies that will benefit a vast majority of people in this country, as opposed to, policies that have been pushed forward through, a lot of the past administrations that only benefit those at the very top of the income bracket, as well as corporations. For example, the Trump tax cuts were basically $1.5 trillion giveaway to the wealthy and the corporations, which is the same amount of student loan debt that we have in the United States. So, instead of helping out people that, really truly need it, people that went to school for their education, to further themselves, to, get better employment prospects, to gain more knowledge, all of these different types of things, and then they get out of school, they're saddled with thousands or tens of thousands of dollars of debt, because we don't treat education as a common good or a human right in this country. So instead of helping those people out, Trump gave away tax breaks to people, in the top 0.1% or even 0.01%, so they can, go out and buy another yacht or put more money into stock buybacks for the corporation. So super important, again, to look past people's rhetoric, to actually see, what that rhetoric, when put into policy and practice, the disastrous consequences that it has. Now again, Biden would be, an improvement over Trump in some ways, but he's not the type of he's not a transformative candidate, and that's what this country and the world needs right now, especially when we're dealing with these huge problems like climate change, like people dying from lack of access to health care, like people taking on thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt because they're getting a education and bettering themselves. And we need somebody that is able to tap in and to channel into that transformative, energy that is, basically rising up in this country. And, like those polls said, a lot of the policies, pretty much all the policies that Bernie advocates for, a majority of Americans support, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, as well as if you frame these ideas and questions in a, neutral or a positive way around these policies, their support goes up even more, as opposed to if you frame it in a way that, makes these policies sound like something, that they're not. So again, we need to do everything that we can to make sure Bernie's the Democratic candidate. He's the one that I also believe has the best chance of beating Trump. So if we want to beat Trump, we need to make sure Bernie is the next Democratic candidate for president. Excuse me. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment sections below. Please subscribe for more content, and I would love to hear about anything else you'd like me to touch on with regards to politics, bicycling, food, veganism, the environment, anything like that, drug use, no topics off limits. Peace.